the Polish government basically just stole a bunch of money from the Russian embassy in Warsaw, right? And they've been screwing with the Russian mission there for, over a year now. Here, this is the story from Reuters, right? So Polish prosecutors seized significant amounts of money from the frozen bank accounts of the Russian embassy and trade mission, according to the Russian ambassador. Okay, so he said that it's a flagrant violation of the Vienna Convention, etc., which I'll get to in a second. And here they make mention that Poland blocked the accounts shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022 on the basis that they could be used for money laundering or terrorist finance. I mean, that's kind of funny, man. But yeah, they did that exactly around the time where they kicked out 45 Russian diplomats, right? Or should we say employees of the embassy. So technically not every single one. Just let me show you this story back then, because it's so funny reading it again. So they say here last week, keep in mind, this is in February 2022, so last year, okay? So the Polish government ordered 45 employees of the Russian embassy to leave the country within 5 days. The Russians, under diplomatic cover, were to carry out espionage activities in Poland, creating intelligence networks of contacts and informants and sending the information they gained back to their country. Yeah, no shit, that's called an embassy. What do you think an embassy is? An embassy is a nice way of saying a spy station. Of course they're spying. Man, half these people, you'll have, and this applies to everybody, the Americans, the Polish, doesn't matter, right? You'll have some guy who's called, what's the typical Irish name? Ivan? I don't know. But let's say you have John Doe, who's the cultural attaché at some U.S. embassy. The guy's CIA. There is no cultural attaché. This is a front title, okay? Yeah, they're spies. Of course they are. But they already knew that. This is just an excuse to kick them out, okay? So get this. They kicked out the 45 diplomats, spies, same thing. I'm being cheeky, obviously. Not every single diplomat is a spy, but you could say most of them are. And then they froze 2 million euros. Actually, when the Russians tried to withdraw 2 million euros, they then froze the accounts. Okay, so these accounts have been frozen for a year now, and now this week the Polish have actually emptied out the accounts and just stolen all of the money. I guess they thought no one would notice or something. I mean, this is really crazy because, look, man, whether you agree with the Russians or you don't like the Russians, what the guy's saying here is correct, that this is a violation of the Vienna Convention. You can't go around, forfeiting, stealing, other countries' assets just because they're in your country. You can't go around doing this, man. They're saying that this financing terrorism. I mean, this is a bullshit charge. This is just whatever they think they can rubber stamp it with. It's nonsense. So what's going on now? As soon as I read this, I was like, the Russians are gonna start taking the Polish and the Poles and their money over in Moscow. And I did a bit of digging, and that's exactly what's going on. So they are basically they are frozen the accounts of they've done the same thing to the Poles in Moscow. So it's just a matter of time when both countries run out of money. Well, I think we could say the Russians already ran out of money because it just got stolen, right? But it's just a matter of time until Poland also has no more money left to pay for their embassy in Moscow, and then they're just. I mean, what's going to happen here? Are they just going to confiscate the embassy grounds? Because Poland actually did that as well, right? So they said that the Russians were not paying for some recreational center. So it's adjacent to the embassy, but it's not actually the building where the Russian diplomats work. And they said that the Russians weren't paying rent. Well, yeah, there's no money to pay the rent anymore, I guess. So the embassy is probably next. I don't know. But, this is a great way to cut off ties without formally doing it. If this is what you're trying to do, and I think this is, the Polish government is very anti-Russia, and again, people in Poland, they have, their reasons, historically speaking, and so on. But, because Poland really got screwed by the Nazis, and remember the Soviet-German pact. When they invaded Poland, the plan was to slice it two ways. Mm-hmm. But I'm not talking only about that, But in any case, right now, in terms of Ukraine and Poland's position towards Ukraine, is very pro-Ukraine and very anti-Russia. The thing is, though, just because you're very pro-Ukraine, you can't go around confiscating the Russian embassy's money and closing. Closing the grounds. I mean, come on. If that's the case, then everyone's going to start doing that. That's why you have these things in place like Vienna Convention, so you can't do these sorts of things. One of them, just as an example, is arresting a diplomat and saying, "Oh, he's a spy." Yeah, well, we know they're spies, but you can't go around doing that because then everybody would start arresting everybody, and this is a very big problem, right? The other thing is that when it comes to the accounts that they're talking about here, this is considered, amongst the physical properties, it's considered other assets amongst other assets belonging to the country. So it's not some bank account; it's a bank account that belongs to the Russian Federation and their diplomatic mission inside of Poland. And Poland is the host country. They're supposed to protect that mission, and vice versa. It goes both ways. This kind of relates to what I was saying before with the military bases, right? Why is China putting a base in the Solomon Islands? Maybe sometime. And why do the Russians want a base in the Red Sea? It's because the Americans go around putting bases everywhere. And then the Russians and the Chinese, they start engaging in the same behavior. Not the same, 800 versus 4 or 1 or 3 is not the same. But still, it's the same kind of thinking, right? That may lead to a similar result. And then when you look at the prisoner swaps, between Russia and the Americans, why do you think in some cases the Russians are suspected of giving these high sentences? Like Brittany Griner, or the Marine who was swapped between. So the first was with Yeroshenko, and then with Victor Bout. Why do you think the Russians are suspected of giving these high sentences? Because the Russian citizens in American prisons, they were kidnapped and rendered and given these huge sentences. So now the Russians got to do the same thing in order to get their own citizens back. Right? So the point I'm trying to make here is that when you have somebody breaking the rules and behaving in this manner, sooner or later, everyone is going to start doing the same thing because they think that, well, if America is doing it, then it's acceptable to do that. And we have no choice but to do that. Right? That's how you end up with other countries mimicking that behavior. And you could also talk about Ukraine as the same thing. How many times did the United States and the United Kingdom break the UN Charter, and how many countries did they invade before, they kind of signal to Russia that it's okay to do the same thing when you want? Yeah. Or how many times did Israel ignore UN Security Council resolutions and annex, Jerusalem and annex the Golan Heights before the Russians thought, okay, maybe we can do the same thing? When you don't respect the conventions and you don't respect the laws, then it's a free for all. Anybody can do the same thing now. And of course, the reasoning behind Iraq and the reasoning behind Ukraine and all these things, they're completely different. But when you look at it from the UN's point of view, it's clear cut. And when you look at them from this Vienna Convention, from that point of view, between, okay, we're going to take your money and then we'll seize these embassy grounds. Okay, we'll take your money and seize your embassy grounds. This never ending. It's never ending. And this is how you end up with, rules that, well, why do you think no one respects the UN? Because because no one respects the damn rules that and then you end up with treaties and conventions that are worth nothing, unfortunately, that are completely worthless. In any case, it'd be interesting to see how the people in Poland and Russia kind of work their differences out, because they are neighbors, and sooner or later, long after the Ukraine war is over, they have to resume ties and work things out. So again, this sentence, this time from Reuters, is so ridiculous. Look at this. Of course they do. Of course they do, man. You know that. You already knew that when they checked in the country. Oh man, that's really funny. They write this like it's some kind of novel concept. Yeah, it's just the way it is, unfortunately,